The mainstream, lamestream, going extinct dinosaur media is determined to get back to shadow banning, censorship, and making sure you can't say what you want to say, what you really think. They're winning in Europe. Will they win again in America? Today we'll talk about what's happening and why folks are still being deplatformed all across this great big beautiful web. It's a great day. It's a groovy day, folks. Thank you for coming our way right here to the Pro Channel, where we, as ever, endeavor to explain entertainment. Today, we've got a great guest, the best guest possible to explain what's happening with deplatforming and where the future may lie. It's Eric Metaxas. He's ready to decide what we need to know when it comes to where folks will go in the future with shadow banning, deplatforming, censorship, etc., and why it's taking off in Europe. But the U.S. is still trying its best to hold it at bay. Click the like button, and we're underway. You have had difficulty at times getting this story out to redefine back to what it should be, the history of America, the truth, the reality. Talk to us a little bit about the efforts to strangle the story, to shadow ban, to deplatform. And I know that you've had horrific challenges placed upon you by Silicon Valley, perhaps at the behest of the prior administration, but walk us through your journey and whether or not you think we're on the other side.
Well, I think we're in the middle of the fight. We're in the middle of the war, but the war could have been over. It's kind of like the story I tell in my book about Washington escaping across the East River with his army in 1776. He lived to fight another day. That was miraculous. I think that we've been given a reprieve and that we're in the fight, and I think ultimately we will win, but we're still in the fight. Because I dared to have a guest on my show, on my podcast, the Eric Metaxas Show, talking about vaccine passports, YouTube demonetized the whole thing, just wiped us out. I said, this is unbelievable. I was having a conversation in a free country about a subject that interests my audience, interests pretty much everybody, right? Like, couldn't even talk about it. So I was deplatformed. It's happened to me many times. With this book, I have been astonished that if you go to Amazon now, you can get plenty copies right away. If you go to barnesandnoble.com, and this was true today, I don't know if they're ever going to change this. If you go to Barnes, now keep in mind, the book is a New York Times #2 bestseller, so one of the top selling books in America. You go to barnesandnoble.com and you say, oh, I'm just looking for a book, Revolution. You type in the search bar, Revolution. My book doesn't even come up anywhere. There's like 40 other books relating to the subject of the revolution, every other kind of revolution, whatever. My book is about the revolution. The title is Revolution, does not come up on bn.com. I said, is this a joke? Like I kept looking around and trying to figure this out. That's called shadow banning. If you go into Barnes & Noble stores, most of them don't have the book, or they don't have it prominently displayed. They got one copy in the back. And I thought, this is a New York Times bestseller. It's at the top of the New York Times list. All those other books, they've got piles of them when you walk into the store. So something weird is going on. I mean, look, it's not weird. We know what it is. We know that there are people that don't like this version of things, and so they have to suppress it. But which is one of the reasons that I'm kind of shameless in asking people, please buy the book. Please give the book to your relatives and neighbors and friends. This is a book I wrote for everybody. It's not for history buffs. This is for Americans. If you're an American, you need to know this story. But making it a bestseller is the only way to break through into the mainstream. These are true stories, and this is a true story, and this is a true accounting, but it has to break into the mainstream. The secular left, they've taken over, obviously, PBS. They've taken over colleges, the New York Times. You can't get this version. And I just find that amazing that we're living in a time, I didn't write, like, this is not some MAGA conservative book. This is just a happy story of our history. But if you do that in this day and age, there are people that don't like it. They want to suppress these ideas, because if these ideas get out, we're going to win the war for liberty in America. We're going to be able to be free, for another 250 years or as long as God allows us. But we have to fight. So to me, writing the book is part of the fight. It's like, we've got to get the truth out. And again, this is not an angry book. It's a fun, happy story of what happened 250 years ago. There's just the heroes involved. Nathan Hale, amazing heroes. But if they can keep suppressing that, as they've done a pretty good job of doing for 50 years, the lies will come in. And so we are in a war, an ideological war right now. And I wrote my book hoping, to educate a new generation so that we can understand what it means to be free, what America really is, how we got our freedoms, where they come from, and how we keep them.
Final question for you. How close did we come to becoming a censorship state like the United Kingdom? And how close are we to that still happening, depending on how future elections go?
Under the last administration, which a very, very dark time for a lot of Americans, we were on the edge of the abyss. And there are a lot of people, even friends of mine, that they didn't see that. I think that they were very naive. And they said, oh, the pendulum swings back and forth. That is garbage, okay? You tell that to the people in the boxcars going to Auschwitz. The pendulum swings back and forth. Sometimes horror happens. Sometimes
right. I call it corruption escape velocity.
Yes. Evil takes over, and it's over. And we were on the verge of that with the last administration. If Kamala Harris, God forbid, had become president, we have laws being made that are, I was on the president's commission on religious liberty, which we just submitted the report to the president a few weeks ago. The persecution of Christians across this country under the Biden administration, I can't even talk about it. It's so upsetting. It's so sick. The persecution of pro-lifers. Real persecution. I don't mean, like somebody disagreed with them. I mean, ugly, ugly stuff.
What we see in the UK currently, what we see right now happening. Yeah.
It is happening all over Europe. And why is it happening in Europe? Because they've lost touch with these ideas. Not that they ever really got it, but they sort of got it. There's a woman in Finland, I think, who spoke about a biblical view of sexuality. She was not even allowed to land in Heathrow Airport. That's how dark it is in England right now.
Yep.
That they are coming against a biblical worldview with this level of hostility and brutality. This is not just like they have a different point of view. They are being aggressive in persecuting people who have a biblical worldview. And I thought, you don't have to agree with my worldview, but you're going to persecute me for having that worldview. That's where we are. And so people need to understand we really are in a war, and it's an ideological war. It's a spiritual war. It's a cultural war. And the story of my book, we haven't talked about it, but really the story at the heart of the book, this is a culture war that took place between the American colonies, which were dramatically Christian, and the British elites, who were dramatically secular, cynical, corrupt, and dissolute. They were dramatically, publicly immoral. And I tell that story a little bit in the Amazing Grace book that you lifted up about Wilberforce. The Georgian era British elites were very decadent, and they sneered at the Americans with their little Bible values. They made a bunch of religious hypocrites. So it's kind of like looking at the Hollywood elites, governing a town of homeschoolers in Oklahoma, like completely different values. One of them is earnest and believes in the Bible, and the other one is very cynical, very corrupt. That's kind of the battle for liberty that happened 250 years ago. It's the battle we're still in, which is why all of this is so relevant. And I'm so grateful to you for talking about this, because there is nothing more important right now. We're in an ideological war, and our kids will suffer if we don't stand up and understand this stuff now.
We need to save our stories. It saves our culture. It saves our kids. And Eric, I want to thank you before we go to the super chats, because nobody could have explained some of these things regarding slavery or the difference between the spiritualist and the materialist, England versus America, that was the founding stage for the revolution. I won't say American Revolution, because you've convinced me this is the revolution, and this is the book people should be reading.
Yeah, it's the revolution in world history. And really, the people who were involved in it, they really believed this was God acting in history to show a new way forward for humanity. They all believed that. And again, even if you don't believe it, you need to know that's what they believed, and you need to honor them by trying to understand their point of view. That's why I wrote the book. It's that's the whole idea. But I'm just so grateful for all this time on your show with your great audience. This is important stuff, but it can also be fun. It should be fun, and we should be inspired, to live out these values. So thanks for having me.
Could you share with the audience who may not be familiar, who are you, what do you do, and, what are you up to these days?
Who am I? That's like an existential question. That's heavy, but I'll keep it simple.
All right, Marty McFly.
I'm I'm a father. I'm a husband. I'm a son. I grew up in New York City and in Connecticut, and I am a writer. Mainly, I'm known. I guess I'm known as the host of my podcast, The Eric Metaxas Show. I do a thing called Socrates in the City. But a lot of people know me mainly as a writer. I've written a lot of books. I wrote a book called Bonhoeffer, which was a huge bestseller a few years ago about a pastor who got involved in the plot to kill Hitler. It was turned into a movie called Bonhoeffer. I've just written a lot of books, but the new book is called, I was just going to say, Is Atheism Dead? That's not right. That's the last book. I've written a lot of books. The new one is about the American Revolution.
Revolution, sir.
And it is, I mean, I wrote it because I say this is our super centennial. This is our 250th, the super centennial of the country. And I just thought I need to write a book that tells the whole story of how the country came into being, what happened 250 years ago. And it turns out to be a very exciting story. Every American should be inspired by our story. And I wrote it because I think a lot of us have drifted away from knowing this. Like, we've been living in a time the last 40, 50 years where America's been denigrated. A lot of people have just kind of drifted away from celebrating who we are. And I thought that's kind of sick, actually, because when you know who we are and how we came into being and how people suffered and died so that we could have liberty and self-government, it's a pretty horrible thing if we don't understand what that is. And so I said, I want to write a kind of a fun book that tells the story. And as you mentioned, it's been selling so well. I'm amazed.
Despite their best efforts to stop you, you're still succeeding.
Well, it's kind of funny, though, isn't it? It's like, I think that, I'll tell you, when the book first came out, so it's like 5 weeks ago, it was #2 on the New York Times list. And it was last night it came out, it was #2 again, right? When it came out as #2, the #1 book, according to the New York Times, was the Jill Biden book. Now, I don't know anybody who really wants to read the Jill Biden book, but we looked into it, and the official publishing numbers were that her book sold 25% less copies, fewer copies than my book. So the New York Times is always kind of pushing, it's not a true list, right? It's like, it's kind of what they want it to be. But even so, they had to put my book at #2. Last night, they put it at #2. What's the #1 book? Oh, it happens to be a book by 2 New York Times reporters. So yes, the mainstream media, or in this case, the leftist lunatic media, I mean, because the New York, it doesn't get worse than the New York Times, they don't like the true story of America. They'd rather have the kind of the sad story that you can watch on Ken Burns's PBS version, which is kind of depressing, to be honest. I mean, it's not kind of depressing. It is depressing. It's not exciting. And it's kind of like the radical left. It's like if they're doing a remake of the Rocky movie, they would make you walk out of the theater like, I don't know who really was the hero. Like, they both had their stories, That's not a good movie. And so when they tell the story of America, it's exactly the same thing. They don't really feel like they should celebrate America. They want to tell you about what's wrong with America. There's something sick about that. It would be like if it's your daughter's 10th birthday and you're like, well, you know what? We don't want to celebrate too much. All your friends and family, we're going to focus on where you can do better on your birthday. Like, it's pretty sick. And that's kind of where we are in America. So I wrote my book as a celebration, but again, I shouldn't say I wrote it as a celebration. It is a celebration, but I didn't write it that way. I just said I want to tell the story, or the stories, of what happened, 250 years ago. Turns out it is something to celebrate. Turns out these are amazing heroes. We need to know their names and their stories. You can't help but get inspired when you know it. And so I said, I've got to tell these stories for a new generation in a way that I hope is fun. And a lot of people have been saying that, I can't put it down. It reads like a novel. As an author, that's the greatest thing you want to hear, because a dull history book is a bad history book. So I am really excited that many Americans are familiarizing themselves with, our great story, which is, this is the time. This is the summer.
Parting is such sweet sorrow, ladies and gentlemen. It's only made sweet because there's more content on the way. We never stop. It drives the Hollyweirds mad, but we've got decades left in the can, and we keep going and going and going. Oh, wait. Are we showing our cards? That's right. We'll never stop going near and far and sending out the content you love. Folks, you can help us continue to do just that. smash that like button, drop a comment down below, let us know your thoughts. And until the next time, keep learning, keep growing, and as always, keep having fun.